Welcome to the Embodiment Podcast. This show is for you if you see the body as more than a brain taxi. It's for people interested in coming home to the body as a holistic aspect of who we are and how we live. Episodes contain practical tips, exercises you can take away, and interviews with specialists from around the world. I'm your host for today, Mark Walsh. Okay, so we're having another one of our plague dialogues. It's like the return of plague dialogues today. And we had two last minute cancellations for very good reasons from Milan and Rachel. So it's just the gents, it's just the gentlemen today. So let me introduce, we have Miles Kessler. Miles Kessler is a meditation teacher, an aikido sensei, a very creative aikido sensei as well. Living in Israel, running a dojo there, has been involved with peace projects there, an old friend of mine. So Miles, welcome.
Hey, Mark, and Rafe and Philip. Nice to be here with you all.
And we have Philip Shepherd. So Philip is a teacher who works with embodied meditation, known for his work in sort of linking the environment with embodiment, author of many books such as Radical Embrace. And Philip, welcome.
Yeah, lovely to be here with all of you. Thank you.
Okay, and this represents my good friend Rafe Kelley, the founder of Evolve Move Play, background in martial arts, parkour, very kind of scientific guy, logical guy, smart guy. He's been looking at the pandemic probably more than anyone, probably a bit too much, Rafe? And has been sort of deep in analysing it scientifically and all this kind of stuff. So Rafe, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely too much.
Too much. So where are you today, and just kind of how are you? Let's start with a kind of check-in round, like a minute each. Where are you? How are you? And we'll go the order I introduced you in from now on.
Thank you, Miles.
Yeah, sorry. I think right now I have something in my throat, so I had to drop my mic. Yeah, that's a great question, Mark. Well, I'm here in Tel Aviv, Israel. We've had about a week of 39-degree weather, so we had an early kind of heat wave hit us, which is about, for Americans, about 97 degrees or something like that past week. And who knows if it's related, but we've seen the corona numbers already. The numbers were really declining. Now they're just like almost down to zero. And even though the country is officially supposed to be opening around the 30th, it looks like it's going to be even moved forward probably next week.
This is May 22nd for anyone listening that's on the podcast, May 22nd of recording.
Yeah, great. So even though we started our activities here in the dojo, with distance and no physical contact already 2 weeks ago, it looks like this coming week we're going to start to roll out slowly regular training. And yeah, it looks like we're getting back to our, or at least our communal activities.
Hey, Philip, where and how are you?
I'm in Toronto, Canada. We're behind Israel. Things are starting to open slowly. There's no sense of life being back to normal. And of course, we have this massive elephant just south of our border. And, we watch with some trepidation as that chaos plays itself out. So I think the border between Canada and the US will remain closed for some time for our own good. It's a strange, delicious, troubled time. My mom died a few weeks ago, nothing to do with corona. She hadn't been well, and other people have died not from corona. And meanwhile, there's this sense of dilating peace that I'm never very far from. So kind of drinking all that in.
Philip, Rafe, how you doing, man?
I'm a little burned out, as I've shared with you recently. Just been a lot of things trying to happen, and took on too many things, burned myself out. But I'm here in aspirational South Canada.
So that's the northwest of the US.
Yeah, we have very good control of the coronavirus situation here in Seattle. The tech companies were great. We would desperately love to have a border with the rest of the United States, which is now behaving rather irrationally. But hopefully things will continue to trend in the right way. We're in phase 2 of the opening right now. Small fitness classes can reopen, gyms can reopen, in small ways. So that's really nice to see. Not too bad there.
Great. Well, I'm in Brighton, England. We're beginning to end the lockdown. It's sort of two ways that it's ending. One is officially. So, for example, I'm allowed to have a PT lesson with my fitness trainer tomorrow, and I had a Tai Chi lesson this morning. And there's the unofficial way, which is a lot of people just sort of getting fucked off with it. And most people seem to have collectively come to a conclusion of reduction rather than minimization. And it seems like some people don't quite get that distinction, but going, okay, you know what? I'm not going to sort of start having orgies and licking everyone I meet. But it seems like most British people are reaching out socially to 1, 2, 3, small groups of people, and sort of unofficially doing it that way as well. I know we expect normal shops to open again at the beginning of June. So I saw a sign on the, I think it's the dry cleaners just near my house today saying opening, 2nd of June or whatever. And there seems to be a plan there. And where deaths are sort of way down from what they were. I think we're on about 200-300 a day as opposed to what was nearly 1,000 at one point. So it's... yeah, I guess I want to kind of stick. We're not going to give out medical advice today, obviously. None of us are doctors, and we're not, none of us are in charge of the planet to sort of organize things that way. But what I am interested in is mood as an embodiment trainer. So I've noticed I've had a grumpy mood a few times the last couple of weeks, a kind of sense of being like a caged animal at times. I've got some exhaustion. I know, Rafe, you've had this burnout where you've kind of gone into like huge activity and then, crashed from that. I've definitely been seeing a lot of like tiredness, low level irritation. What's your sense of the mood of people around this, the state, the emotional state around this?
You want to go again in order, Mark, or is this just...
Yeah, let's do it around unless someone's super inspired.
Well, I can just say for myself, I mean, I've gone, I guess it was about a total of 60 days plus, I guess, that we were sheltering in place and locked down even here a little bit. I went through cycles of depression. Now, I went through cycles which culminated in depression, which, a few days later looking back, it's like, well, that was pretty depressing. And then coming out of it and, getting inspiration and kind of throwing my energy back into dealing with the situation. And then another week later, it was waves of like, what the fuck is going on here? And then dealing with it and coping and pivoting and coming up with new ideas to take my business forward in a way. And that whole thing was definitely exhausting, and also did lead to a little bit of resilience as well. We all come out of these experiences changed and different. And right now I'm just more resting in that, I think. That's kind of where I'm at right now. And also it's like the tunnel is opening up for us here. So that's kind of where I'm at these moments.
Got a bit of hope at the end of the tunnel there. I've been noticing it's sort of difficult to know, like if I'm in a bad mood or I'm a bit depressed. I've had a couple of students say they were suicidal, and people that really surprised me, people that hadn't have a history of depression, were very upbeat people. And I've always gone, okay, in their case or in my case, I've gone, is this me? Is this what just happened? Is this just a free floating mood? And there's these sort of weird cycles I've noticed within it as well. Philip, what have you noticed in terms of the mood around this?
Yeah, you're making me think. There's a researcher, Stephen Cole, who's a social genomist. Basically what he looks at is how our social systems affect us genetically at an epigenetic level. And he's found that stress certainly has an effect genetically, but social isolation, stress can't even come close to the effect it has on us. So I'm feeling some of that. I went through a gnarly period early on, and it was just this thing I did where I invited death a little closer in, and made peace with that in a different way. And that sort of shifted something for me. So, I'm vacillating between being immersed in work and forgetful of the world in that focus, and then dilating into, I'm lucky because I've got a lot of nature around, and nature is just indifferent to what's going on with us, and it goes on, and it's strong and resilient, and is maybe a little grateful for the diminishment of our regular activities.
It's interesting. I've noticed that I've needed to be in nature every day. I walk to the sea today. I walk barefoot on the grass every day for at least half an hour. Usually I spend 1 or 2 hours coaching people while walking around the park. And it's become, in this lockdown, sort of contact with the natural world's become almost a need for me. And if I don't get it, I get real irritable within a couple of days. And it's kind of interesting that I've noticed that reconnection a little bit, you know. And also, we talked about place in previous Plague Dialogue talks, and 12 weeks in my neighborhood within walking distance. This is by far the longest I've spent. I've spent more time in my neighborhood in the last 12 weeks than the past year, you know. I've found back alleys that I haven't discovered before. I'm intimately familiar with every place in the park and the bush that I go to the toilet behind because they've closed the public toilets, and the different parts of the park and the different moods of the park and the different feels. And it's, I'm really in place in a more solid way. I don't imagine it's quite the same as, my ancestors who lived in the same square few miles of rural Ireland and farmed the land for potatoes, but there's there isn't that kind of intimacy, but there is an increased intimacy with place. Rafe, this is a bit of a meeting of Workaholics Anonymous here. Everybody here, we've kind of got this kind of like accidentally today, this male group of kind of work ethic. Philip's work's also about being and not doing, but I think all of us, even he wouldn't have written 3 or 4 books if he didn't graft. Like everybody here has got a work ethic. So if you're willing to share a little bit about your burnout, I think it's quite it might be helpful for people to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, I was very early in awareness of what was about to happen with coronavirus. I started really worrying about it, I think, in about mid-February. And I just happened to kind of be tuned into a lot of very smart people in the biology world and in the tech startup world who were early warners. And so I could see it writing on the wall. And I wanted to deny what was happening because it meant that I was going to have to cancel at least one event and maybe more events that were my livelihood. And eventually I got to this point where it's like Jordan Peterson has this book he recommends called There's No Such Thing as Dragons. And in the book, there's a little boy, Billy Bixby, who wakes up one day with a dragon in his room. And he pats the dragon on the head and he goes downstairs and he tells his mom, "Hey, there's a dragon." His mom says, "There's no such thing as dragons." And then the dragon gets bigger. And so they go through this cycle where every time he points out there's a dragon, his mother denies the dragon and it gets larger. And eventually the dragon runs away with their house. And then finally his dad comes home and he's like, "What happened to the house?" And Billy's like, "There's a dragon." And his mom says, "No." And he's like, "There is a dragon. It's right here." And as soon as they acknowledge it, the dragon starts getting smaller again. And so the lesson in that is like, problems grow to the size that force you to acknowledge them. So I felt like I needed to acknowledge it and put it out there. And once I did, it triggered something in me where I had this intense energy and I was spending about 2 hours every night studying, teaching myself math, reading the literature in order to understand what was going on. Usually an hour in the morning, half an hour at lunch, and that lasted for a long time. And then it was gone. The wind was gone. I went through this really intense moment where I realized that I had made myself responsible in some way for the entire movement community's response to coronavirus. And that was a burden that I was incapable of continuing to carry. And so I sat in the park and cried for a while before I was able to train because it was impossible to do what I was doing. And I didn't know, I don't know how I ended up there because I'm not really, I'm pretty good with science, but I'm not a researcher in any of this. But somehow a lot of people came to rely on me for their source of information on it. So that's been hard to get back into like a steady wind in my sails after that.
A couple of things occurred to me kind of listening to that. It's this kind of perennial question of how much do we confront the uncomfortable and unpleasant, and how much, ride out to meet the dragon, and how much do we guard the gates of the senses, to use a Buddhist analogy. Go, okay, there's only so much I can take in here. I've seen humanitarian aid workers get burnt out from just trying to take on too much. How much responsibility do we shoulder? In Peterson's thing, it's like as much as you can, right? But not more, right? But not more, and not infinite amount to how much responsibility can we, take on for our communities and our families? And do I just want to look after my immediate family, or my communities like the Embodied Yoga Principles community, the EFC community, or the wider embodiment community, or the wider community beyond that? Because there's a point where you just go, it's too much, right? Mm-hmm. And the other thing that occurs to me is some of the trauma stuff we've been talking about with like Alan. I'm sure Alan would have something to say about this if she was here today. She couldn't make it, unfortunately, which is this confronting existential threat, and plague is that. There's an archetypal, ancestral resonance with plague. How many plagues have our peoples gone through? Miles's Jewish people have written some of those down, and there's a few in Irish history, and there's definitely some that swept across North America. And
that's why I'm white.
Say again?
I said the reason that there's white people living here in the Northwest is
because of plague, right? Plague. Yeah. That's the main thing that killed the native peoples, as I understand it. It's not quite the story I've been told. They were all massacred, by soldiers and stuff. It seems like most people were killed by plague, and maybe someone can correct that if that's not historically true. But it's this being in contact with this existential threat can have this rush of adrenaline, this rush of energy. Like, right, I'm going to do something, and you did. You really went out there and you found information and you gave that to people. And it was useful and it was helpful. But then it's like, how long can we ride on that adrenaline before crashing? I've seen lots of people crash. You're not the only one. And I've seen mini crashes, It's like I had about a week where I just had to kind of ease off some of the projects I'd started.
Yeah, for sure. I lasted about 4 weeks, I think. Maybe 5.
You're tough.
Thanks.
Rick's a tough guy. That's just longer than most people would last. Yeah, so it's something about sustainability we're being taught here in terms of our own energy cycles, our own limits, how much we can shoulder.
Yeah, I wanted to just jump Mark on the not more thing, because as much as I love the good Dr. Peterson, I'm not sure that he says that. And if he does say that, I'm not sure that he says it sufficiently.
Oh, really? Have I just added some sanity to that? So,
well, he says take the biggest thing you can carry. Can implies not more than what you can carry.
Okay, I think we need to make that explicit.
Maybe, for folks like me, maybe not more is a really important addition.
Okay, made that can a little bit more fleshed out. Mm.
I think one of the, like in terms of the mood, Mark, I think there's something that's happening in a subterranean way where the body is adjusting to new relationships. And so there's a little sense of dislocation within that. I mean, suddenly the body is something you don't want close to another body. And then that changes how you travel. I mean, do you go on a bus? Or do you walk? Or do you always go in your car now because that's a safe realm? And the sense of feeling how your relationship with travel and people and the outside world is shifting. And then, there are larger relationships to me that are shifting, like our relationship to the guy who picks up my garbage is changing, because there he is serving away as he's always done, exposing himself to keep us going. And, then there are even larger relationships that are shifting, like our economies are maybe adjusting to sourcing more locally. And in the larger
more digitally.
Or digitally. I mean, which is the alternative to staying at home. So I find there are a lot of adjustments that are being made just in the body locating itself in this world in a different way.
No, can I just go off of that, because I find it really easy, because as I said, here in Israel, the numbers are really dropping off, the corona numbers, and it's just like, it's happening the last week a lot. And you see people coming out and then kind of testing the waters and everything that Philip just said about, finding that social distance. There's a term in aikido, Mark probably knows, or if you guys know from the Japanese martial arts, it's this combative distance. When you're in play or combat with another person, how close are you going to be? And, what do you need to? So, of course, this is not combat, but everybody's still kind of testing the waters and finding out where that's going to be. And it's coming closer. I can feel it day by day, especially here in Israel, because social distance is on normal days, it's non-existent. Yeah. It's like in your space all the time, but it's happening. But that system, that kind of, let's say, local system, we can see it starting to adjust, but it's also going to be an international system because our borders are closed. Nobody's getting in. I mean, there's a few flights coming in, but with heavy monitoring. And as this system starts to connect more together, it's going to be interesting to see what happens when we start to connect with other countries through transit. Like, for example, in South Korea, a week, 2 weeks ago, they had another outbreak because of one super spreader. They opened the nightclubs and one guy came in and went around and did bar hopping, and he got 2,000 people were in contact with him. They had to shut everything down again. And apparently this guy came from the outside somewhere. So it's like, as soon as the country starts, there's also going to be this international. I mean, Philip, I don't know how quick Canada's going to let down its border, but it's going to be interesting to see how that also affects.
Yeah, fucking liberal you are, Canada. Let's see how liberal you are when your ass is on the line. So everybody believes in borders during a pandemic.
Yeah, Mark, that's one thing. That's one thing I've noticed in myself. I've become more conservative in these times. Yeah, in almost every way. In almost every way. Yeah. And I'm not a conservative guy.
It shows that basically whatever the boundaries are, you want them stronger when you're under more threat from pathogen load. And there's also more xenophobia and more tolerance for authoritarianism, which are things that we should, those can go really wrong if we don't pay attention to them.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting from an Israeli point of view, because, everybody here does the army. And because they all do the army, when they get out, they're like, fuck you to the authority, pretty much. I mean, some people fall in line, but there's a large, if you've ever been traveling internationally, the Israeli backpacker has a really bad reputation because that's how they are right after the army. And then it's kind of like that. But as soon as there's a national crisis, because here in Israel, they've had lots of national crises. I say they, because I'm living here 12 years. So I'm Israeli, but I'm not from, wasn't born here. But as soon as there's a national crisis, everybody falls in line. As soon as the crisis is over, everybody falls out of line again. It's pretty extreme.
Yeah. It doesn't seem to be working that way here in the States.
To me, it's really interesting, the different reactions of different countries in that way. You look at some of the Scandinavian countries, and that capacity for harmonizing around a common cause is just phenomenal. And, it's pretty good in Canada. And then in the States, it seems to be exacerbating the differences that exist and deepening them. And that, there's this whole societal, cultural pull towards standing alone and being independent. And that gathers around my rights, and it leaves the realm of responsibility and the commons. And that, to me, it's so imbalanced, the insistence on my rights to the denial or exclusion often of what my responsibilities to the greater good might be. I think it's really telling.
There's not much of that ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country left in the States. There's kind of like sometimes crisis can bring things together, or it can reveal the cracks. And the culture war, unfortunately, seems to be accelerating in some way through this here in the States.
It seems to have become a blue-red issue there as well, right? It seems to have gone down party lines, which isn't the case in other countries.
Well, I think the culture, it's also being exacerbated by the psychological warfare that's happening on the left and the right. It's in the States, especially, because I do follow quite a bit of the news from back home. It's shocking. It's like, who would have thought, even a few years ago, who would have thought that this is the track we're going down? It's incredible.
Mark, you asked about the mood in a kind of broader way, and then when it got to me, it was what was happening with me. But that's the interesting thing is like in the places that have been hard hit, it does bring people together, and like people don't have major disagreements about what this thing is like in New York. But in the places where they haven't really been hit hard by it yet, it's just completely split down these party lines now. And almost completely. What's weird is there's actually two COVID denier camps. There's the extreme left-wing COVID denier camps, which is like this is all, 5G and,
anti-vaxxer.
Government plot to make us accept authoritarian government, which there's a risk in all that. I see a risk.
There's a risk of authoritarian government for sure.
It happened here. No, they started surveilling people without permission.
There you go. Yeah. So yeah, there's that, and then on the flip side, there's the right, where this is just somehow this is an attack on Trump, right? It's a way of trying to get Trump out of office. That thousands of people in Italy died for, apparently.
Fake news to bring down Trump.
Well, there's definitely brought out a trust debate. Like, what we trust? Do we trust the neighbors? Do we trust our government? Do we trust our doctors? Do we trust the news? If you Rebel Wisdom, friends of mine, they're looking a lot at this, in terms of freedom of speech issues and how they then get weaponized. There's been a very interesting testing and debate around fake news and conspiracy theories. I hear a lot of, but then it's like, well, is anything that's disagreed with a conspiracy theory? Did it escape from in a laboratory in China? Well, actually, there's some evidence for that now. That was a conspiracy theory before. So it's like, it can just lead to this sort of postmodern, not just confusion, but almost just like brain freeze for me, right? Just going, And the mood of this conversation is very different from the mood of if you listen to the previous 3 Plague Dialogue conversations back. Mm-hmm. We're all a lot more sober, a lot more kind of, like there was a certain hopefulness before of like, I think there is this trend of when there's a big crisis or a big change, people have a tendency, myself included, to go, okay, the thing I want is going to happen. So this is the end of political correctness. And, there's a case for that. Or this is, getting in touch with the planet again. Okay, there's a possibility of that. We're going to get community again. My neighbors were swapping numbers and saying hello to each other. And, yesterday I was banging on the ceiling because there was a party happening at 1 a.m. on a fucking weekday. It's like, that didn't last long. Luckily I had their number to text them now. But it was, I wonder how much of that sort of hopefulness of, it's going to create this utopia or that utopia is kind of now kind of like, whoa, we're not really seeing that,
Mm-hmm.
I've still got a hope. I've got a few hopes. I mean, one of my primary hopes, I guess, is that the arrogance of our culture is diminished. That sense that we can have what we want when we want it, with impunity. The sense that we are untouchable as a modern technological society. The sense that, there's damage around, but give us time, we'll get the science to fix it. And maybe all of that has been, the air's been let out of that a little bit. And maybe we can come back to earth and look at each other in a different way and understand the conflated sense of self-importance as a destructive element that is carrying us all to the brink.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because hubris is, and we're actually seeing a lot of that now in some of the political arenas. The hubris towards this whole thing is, but most people are, like you said, sober and approaching this in a realistic way. Like in integral theory, they talk about development you transcend and include. You transcend one stage of development, but you include the previous stage, which is an integration of development. And my whole question now is, okay, so I'm different for sure. And I'm some parts of me feel broken sometimes. It's like, oh my God, what did I just go through? But I'm kind of intact, certainly more than others. It wasn't easy, but I'm still, we got a hole to dig out of, but it's like, I know it's much worse for others. But my big question is, okay, what am I taking with me? What am I including? How have I developed and grown, and what am I including in that development? And the soberness about the situation, because we're going to probably face it again to some degree, but we'll be very prepared in the fall.
Quick break in the podcast to ask you to look at techcrowdfund.org. That's TEC for Charlie, crowdfund.org. On here you can see some ridiculously good deals about embodiment. I mean, most of my books and courses, they're things I'm giving away. This is all related to the Embodiment Conference. You can get a sneak peek at what some of the technology for the conference is going to look like. You can decide if you want to be a Zoom food grandmaster, a ninja professional, a unicorn rider, a dolphin sensei. All this will make complete sense on the website. Take a look. The offers really are very, very good. We're basically raising money ahead for the conference, so there's some offers there that you just won't get again. If you're interested in embodiment, then do check that out. It's TEC for Charlie, crowdfund.org, techcrowdfund.org. And back to the show.
And it's like, what immunities have I brought with me? How have I been inoculated? I haven't been inoculated because I didn't catch it. I think Mark thinks he might have had it, so he's probably
getting tested in a couple of days. Finally, I'll find out if I've got the antibodies or not. If I am, I'm going to go to Italy and lick everyone. No, I can catch it.
There's the virus antibodies, but what other antibodies am I bringing with me? And learning how to pivot when the social structure collapses is definitely an antibody that, I'm not a pro at it yet, but it's definitely an antibody that I'm carrying with me as we go forward.
I notice we all seem a bit tired today. It could just be it's a Friday afternoon and we work hard, Friday morning for some of you guys, but it's we seem kind of tired. And this question of do we have enough stamina, enough left in the tank to actually learn something from this? To actually reflect and okay, what am I taking forward? Am I just in survival mode? I just want to get back to my business. But there is this disillusion of being spoiled. I have this sense we were really fucking spoiled children as a society before. I'm like, I want to get on a plane. I want to get on an EasyJet flight. And, and I want to get a takeaway Japanese food and not have to cook my own food. There's something bratty about how society was. Do you know what I mean? I just want to Tinder swipe someone and have, it's like, no, you stop being a brat. That's almost kind of how I feel because also at this point, we're all a bit irritable. I think everyone's missed one of their favorite things in the last 3 months. There's something you like that you haven't been able to get. And there's a lesson in that, right? We're not, the society of instant gratification has just been no, sorry. We've just had some harsh conservative parenting. So, no, you've got to go to bed. You're not going to get to eat your Japanese food tonight. So it's something like that I'm trying to work out at the moment.
Yeah, to me, that's a little like the arrogance that I'm hoping will come back to earth a little. The thought that you have a right to get on any plane you want and go somewhere because you want to go there, and there's no accountability for the other side of that, the damage that flights are having on our planet, the sense of belonging to this earth. With the coronavirus, we are all in it together. I don't care what your socio and economic status is, you are, potentially as vulnerable as the next person. And I know that, once the virus takes hold, there are so many social conditions that compromise our ability to fight back against. But still, there's a sense of as humanity, we're facing this together.
Eric Weinstein is one of the guys I follow, talks about something he calls the Great Nap, right? Basically, from the end of the Cold War to now, we've been living in this kind of break from history where where only the nice things really happened, or the bad things that did happen were really minor catastrophes. But what we're returning to is more the historical norm, right? Like coronavirus is very bad compared to everything we've had since the Spanish flu. But it's very, very minor compared to the things that they were regularly suffering throughout the medieval period. It's not smallpox. It's not syphilis. It's not bubonic plague, right? And we've built our society such that even these small perturbations are something that we can't handle very well. We're over leveraged and over efficient, and there's no redundancy in our systems, and so there's very little ability to respond in a lot of ways. And so we're being asked to wake up from the nap. The question is, are we really going to do it? Right. There's good reason to think this is not the last pandemic we'll see. Right. Everyone thinks there's going to be a vaccine for this in a year or something, but we don't know for sure.
Daddy will save us, and then we'll all be fine. Everything will go back to normal, Rafe. Don't tell me I have to change. It's like, yeah.
I don't know if you saw, there was a great Greenpeace poster on Facebook. Pre-COVID was the crisis. And I really get home to
I like that. That's awesome.
Yeah. This is normal, right? Like unprecedented. Read more fucking history. This is normal. Plagues and communities and hardship, and this is the light version. I mean, imagine if we'd have got the Black Death back in a big way. This is like some millennial bullshit light virus, like compared to what like most of our ancestors have suffered. This is not the plagues of Israel and in Egypt, So I think we got it easy.
I actually think, if we go back to this kind of idea of what is our developmental opportunity, or not learning opportunity in this developmental moment, kind of goes back to this, what I was saying about transcending and including. I still believe we live in the best time in history. I still believe it. And yet I'm like positivistic about every opportunity that we all have going forward, even though in some cases there are complete incompetent leaders in charge, but they'll be gone soon or soon after that, whatever. But I still am incredibly positivistic about the opportunity we have of going forward as a human race. And yet I know we could also disappear. I haven't lost my sobriety about how fragile it all is, and I can hold those both at the same time instead of a switch on and off. As soon as it got warm, people went to the beaches here, and you could just feel they flipped off that switch and they flipped on this switch, and they're back into fuck you, I'm going to go do what I want because it's time. And I get it, and I also get them both, and that's kind of that. There's kind of a Zen koan tension that I was going to say rest in, but it's not a restful place between those two immense questions, actually.
It seems like something about not switching between extremes as well. Like I saw this very black and white extremes.
But holding extremes.
Yeah, you have to social distance, or you just go back to life as normal. And it's interesting, most people in the UK have sort of settled on something in the middle. And I know something has changed because my face recognition on my iPhone no longer recognized me the last few days. I think it's because I've grown a beard a bit longer. I've been out in the sun. I look haggard.
It's the kilos, Mark. It's the extra kilos.
You think I just look fat, jowly ass, jowly COVID jowls, and I had to reset my capitalist ego phone recognition system today, and it literally didn't recognize me anymore, so I had to reset it. How did that happen? Like over time.
You wouldn't just put it down to personal growth, then? It's something.
I reckon it was sensing. It was Bill Gates sensing. Bill Gates is in program. There's got to be a joke about viruses and Windows in this, but it's him sensing my deep spiritual growth, and that being offensive to the system.
Yeah, red flag.
So that's what it was. Yeah, we got to think it here, guys.
You're gonna get taking your social credit score.
Oh my god! So, I mean, do you fear some things being a bit like really like? I was a big supporter of the social distancing. I still am to a moderate degree, shall we say? Mm-hmm. And do you fear some of the authoritarianness, the things that you'll never get to do again, the fact that I might have to have some kind of a medical test to get on a plane, the fact that if I want to get on a train to see my family, I could get stopped by the police. Yeah, like, this is a weird world that we've somehow been okay with. That people in fear have gone, okay, we'll sign up for that. And I can't see all that being removed afterwards.
Well, here in Israel, I don't see that at all. There's probably some surveillance happening that we have no idea of what's going on. And, in Israel, they can always write that off as security and kind of get away with it. But there's been protests daily for the last 2 weeks. There's been protests daily about, and actually the social net, there was a pretty decent social net here that caught everybody. But there's been protests about that. There's been protests about what's happening with Netanyahu and the government and all this political stuff and social issues, social policy stuff. And it's actually pushing that back. The authoritarian tendency is getting pushed back. I mean, it is, at least if you're Israeli, it's very democratic here. If you're Palestinian, it's another story. But
so the Israeli pushback is coming in there. I'm not seeing a bit of it in the UK. I did see a demonstration, a sort of socially distanced demonstration in Brighton.
My take on this has always been that the short, sharp shock is going to be less damaging than the long bleed, right? So here's the situation that I think is going to happen in the United States, right? We've reopened. We don't have control and we don't have testing. So we have widespread community transmission with over 10 million people infected in the States, right? And we got enough lockdown to get the virus to stabilize at around 1, and basically things weren't getting worse. And now we're reopening without getting it better. This is not here in Washington, but in the States in general. So we lost, people were willing to give up freedoms in order to get some kind of lockdown, right? But what happens if now we have a case that's 10 times worse in August, right? And it lasts for another 4 or 5 months. How much more freedom are people going to give up then, right? And what if it happens again, right, after we lock down there? So for me, the ineffective lockdown is the better tool for the authoritarian, right? I'll lock you down now and do a half-assed version of it. And then the next time that you're scared enough, I'll lock you down more. And by the time that this virus has gone through the population 4 or 5 times, they're going to be begging for the Chinese to come over here and install their state that actually works.
I read a really disturbing story from Mississippi where a church that had gathered for a service was burned to the ground with a sign left, see if you can hold your services now. I mean, it's amazing the underbelly of strife that is being pulled to the surface by this. I think there's a basic fear that is being inflated in ways that authority can take advantage of it. I think the main reason for lockdown is so that hospitals aren't overwhelmed, so that when someone gets sick, we can do the best job possible to take care of them. But, I think the coronavirus is with us, and people are going to get it. It's only the speed with which that happens. And, if it ravages a society, then the strain on the health system, the strain on the economy, will be untenable. But I don't think we can imagine that it's going to go away. So then, at some point, you'll likely come in contact with it.
I know we're kind of deviating to the science, which Mark didn't want to go too much into, but I really want to respond to that because I think it's a lot of people have got this idea of the flattening the curve is what we were after with lockdowns. But I think all the best epidemiologists and virologists want to actually drive this thing as close to extinction as possible. And we know
or immunity, or herd immunity.
But the thing about herd immunity is that we don't actually know that it works, right? We don't, because with coronavirus, it could be a mutation. It could turn. Yeah, it could be. It's not just that. It's when you there's 4 coronaviruses that exist in the population right now, and when you get one, you're not immune forever. Like when you get smallpox, you don't get chickenpox. You don't get it again. But when you get coronavirus this year, you can get it again in 2 years.
Like a mutated version of it.
Not even a mutated.
Or the same one.
Your body just.
I actually thought that the jury was still out on that.
We don't know for sure.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
There's no way to know whether you'll have permanent immunity to this.
I'm going to step in because nobody here is a scientist who's qualified.
Yeah. But here's the point that I really think is important. There's the flatten the curve model, and then there's the smash the curve and have test and trace, or just get rid of it completely. And what China's done, what South Korea has done, what Taiwan has done, what New Zealand has done, what Australia is doing, what Denmark's doing, they have 0 new cases in a lot of these places now. Right. And you can do this. We know you can do this because we've done this with SARS-CoV-1, which was the most closely related virus to this. That does not exist in the human population. It is not endemic because it was locked down and completely destroyed the virus. So right now, I don't think the United States is going to do that. And I think there are other countries who are going to fail to do that, like Brazil. And that means it's going to be endemic to the human population forever. And maybe we have to go for a herd immunity strategy. But there's a lot of dangers to that.
Archetypally, like the countries that seem to have sort of super locked down, protected it, tell me if my thinking's wrong here. Sooner or later, aren't they going to have to open up to the rest of the world? Then they're going to fucking catch it.
That's what I'm saying. Because here in Israel, we got no new cases, but the borders are closed.
Also, archetypally, there's something like the overprotective mother at work in this. It's like, I can keep you safe. You just have to do everything I say and not go meet the other boys. That's what New Zealand feels like to me. And it's being held up as this like ideal, but it's like, what, are people in New Zealand never going to leave the country again? And it's just going to be them and sheep forever? Like, come on.
There's a lot of countries. There's more countries that have been successful with the shutdown now than there are countries who are just failing at it, right? Because you can see Slovenia, almost all of Eastern Europe has done this fairly effectively. Denmark's almost there. Norway's almost there. Israel, and all those countries are going to be able to trade with each other. Like, what I'm thinking is that the countries like the UK and the US who
blacklisted
failed with this,
wow,
right,
a new trading block.
Are going to be, they're going to be
dirty countries, the dirty plague countries, and the nice, clean ones. I was thinking about going to Slovenia. Actually, I've got a lover there. I'd really like to visit. It's a lovely country. So it's okay. I can get it going there.
Can I ask a question? Because I actually, what really interests me right now is where are we going from here? Not just as a society or our country or even a species, but individually, because we're all embodiment practitioners, I'm assuming. Sorry, guys, I don't know you so much. Because I, for me, it's so clear. I mean, I was already going online digital for a long time, but it's so clear that my whole, I used to travel, 15 times a year. I'd get on an airplane or something like that. And I'm so happy for not traveling now. And that whole revenue stream died out, which was painful. But then it gave me opportunities to create new revenue streams for my business. And even though my business took a wobble over this past few months, I can tell you coming into the fall, I'm going to be in a different position for sure. And this whole thing has actually pivoted me in a way that has forced me to evolve in a way that is more resilient towards these types of things. Not just physically, my own health, my family, all this stuff, but actually my business and my embodiment work.
My business has done really well the last few months. We took a hit. We lost about a third of my normal income at first because we canceled stuff, and it was like shit. And then the online stuff did really well. Like the FEC course, we got 210 people on that course. That's the equivalent of it's basically the online version of the Embodied Facilitator Course. That's more people than we've had on EFC in the past 8 years combined, right? And it's a different profit margin because there isn't big venues, for example, like there is for EFC. The price point's a lot lower, the profit's about the same. So I've already reached more people. Most days I'm doing trainings for 200 to 500 people online. So just in terms of like impact, social impact, reaching people, helping people, way more than before. And this has been the best year for my business so far financially. Already, and we're in May. Yeah. So I go, okay, and I want to keep looking at the different bottom lines here, helping people, reaching more people financially.
Yes.
I've seen more of my wife in the last 3 months than I do most years, right? It's like I get to teach and then I get to go next door and have dinner with my wife. right? Instead of being in a restaurant in Russia trying to figure out the fucking menu and dealing with a rude waitress who doesn't want to be there, and, you know, sleeping in some god-awful hotel instead of my own bed, and getting on a plane, and you know what I mean? It's like, this is just better in many ways. And then there's just three of the things I care about right there.
Yeah. Localism has a new energy behind it, right? You know, it's a combination of a new way of engaging in globalization with a new localization. We have there's this saying, you know, there are decades where nothing happens and weeks in which decades happened, right? The online market grew as much between like the end of February and the middle of April as it had in the previous 10 years, right? So,
and even though we've been more socially distanced, I've actually been in actual contact with more people over the last 80 days than I have over my whole past, you know, my usual year. Even though my own local students, you know, I wasn't seeing them, but we were meeting online, and you know, a lot of that was my work, but a lot of it was just serving, you know, just giving, which is also part of the model that we're working with here. You know, content marketing is you just offer a lot of stuff for free. And you just reach a lot of people because that's how you bring them into your work.
I love this alignment between the sort of modern marketing models and spiritual values of being generous. And it like I'm doing workshops for free every day almost, you know, and I'm doing paid stuff, you know, like there is a real alignment, and I think people can tell if it's from the heart as well. But how do we match that then? On the one hand, I'm talking to 400 people yesterday, twice. On the other hand, my Tai Chi teacher today, I gave him his first hug in 3 months, and he almost cried. Okay, so, you know, we're allowed to do this Tai Chi lesson. At the end of it, I was just like, dude, come here, fuck it, you know, give me a hug. And he's just like, you know, and didn't quite, like, it was emotional for him, you know, and it's like, it's kind of a weird world, right? Where on the one hand, I'm in contact with 400 people on the internet. And then on the other hand, there's, you know, an old friend of mine who hasn't had any physical touch in months. How's this? I don't want to know what my question is here, but how does that even square, you know?
Yeah, I think it's a really weird thing. You know, on the one hand, I think the more embodied you are, the more you're able to find richness in a virtual exchange with someone. But also the more embodied you are, the more you realize the lack of that contact with others. It's a funny thing. I mean, I do hope one of the things that comes out of this is that people will awaken to the fact that until they come back to their bodies, they're going to be buffeted by anxieties and changes of wind and not know how to land in the security of their being. I don't know if they'll twig, but I'm hoping they might.
I wonder if people will learn to value touch, you know, in a different way. And,
yeah, it's interesting. I'm sorry, Mark, go ahead.
No, I'm remembering some zombie films I saw growing up. I used to like zombie films, and then have that end of the world excitement, you know, going on that everyone was longing for. I guess they're not so popular right now. And sometimes they'd have a diary, you know, and it'd be like, you know, day 22, and the scientist would look good, and he'd be, you know, in his clothes. And day 28, and he'd like have a bit of beard, and you know, day 400, and he'd look totally like shit, you know. Like I don't know, I'm looking at the screen here, and it's definitely looking like day 100, you know. It's just, we're not quite as shiny as the plague dialogues before, so I kind of want to acknowledge there has been a little bit of a rundown and different weird moods. And I'm thinking, God, if we're having these issues of burnout, and, you know, I really swore at someone about a week ago, like I know I swear a lot, but I actually don't very often swear at people. And this was a full tirade, you know? And I was like, whoa, what the fuck? Afterwards, I was like, what the hell, you know? And Rafe's had his burnout, and I had a mini one. I'm sure, Philip, Miles, you've had your challenges. And I'm thinking, God, if we're having this with all the skills we have, your kids, right? Challenges there. Relationship challenges. Darry and I went through a dip in our relationship. Now we're kind of good again, but it was a couple of rough weeks in our relationship. If I didn't have a therapist on the phone, it wouldn't have been easy. And I'm thinking, and we have all these skills, right? Years of martial arts training, meditation training, dance training, theatre training, all these things. And it's like, I kind of want to cut everyone a bit of slack as well,
It's a good time to learn self-empathy.
I was just going to say the old resources, the old values that we've come back to and relied on, they're not quite working the way they were used to having them work in this pause, in this period of reorientation. Then what do you come back to? How do you find your way back to that state of coherence in yourself?
Yeah. This I was just going to say that this whole period has been, in a way, as a contemplative. It's been rather easy, and I could be fine with another 9 months, to be honest. I mean, I've spent, over the years, I spent 3 years on silent retreat, so it's like nothing for me. Not that every day was the healthiest way to be in silence, but also on the other hand, I have a family, 2 small kids, and we got a lot of human touch there. Daily pillow fights was the normal routine, and I have the scratches, and the kids have the bumps to
Israeli pillow fights, like the pillow flies in on a missile.
No, they got the best of it, believe me. But again, so there's these 2 poles of isolation and being kind of in solitude, and then really like intense, deep communion with family, and digital intimacy on top of that, because the deep connections with my community and the people that I work with, it's been deeper than ever during this period. I mean, like, so touching. And my heart goes out to a lot of them, because, I met so many people that were alone, really in isolation, and not used to it, and not handle it, doing the best they could. And it's all of that, the whole catastrophe right there.
I think I could wrap this up fairly soon. It's interesting. In the early stages, I was making all these predictions, and I felt like, okay, I've got a sense of where this might be going. And now I just don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure I had the energy to know if I did know. So I don't want to end with necessarily predictions here, but we've done hopes, fears, predictions. What should we end with, guys? I want to do like a round of something to end this up. What do you think?
Maybe steps forward.
Steps forward.
Renewed appreciations.
Yeah, something having to do with being nimble in the moment, because I don't know either, but I do know that keeping your finger on the rudder constantly and reading the waters is really the way forward with this thing. And within myself, and within my business, within my family, within the world, within my community, it's all that. It's nothing but that right now. And the rest of it, who the fuck knows?
Who knows? It's a good one. I think mine is like, don't take yourself personally right now. Like, your mood is not your mood. It is this group mood. It is the flow of where you're in response to this. It's a mixture of grief and not knowing. Like, don't take yourself personally right now.
For me,
I'll have to remember that next time you post something, Mark.
I've been a lot less ranty lately. I don't know if you've noticed. I'm sure Mark gets a lot less trouble on Facebook these days.
Sorry, Rafe, I cut you off.
Yeah, no worries. I think for me, the pragmatic, or the objective level is still what's heavier on my mind than the subjective experience level. Sharing what I shared about the smash the curve thing, but the one thing that occurs to me is that the other side of that is that what we hope is that we have more sophisticated tools to contain this that are less limiting as we go forward. Like, there's really good information now that shows that there's very low transmission outdoors. It's like, I'm going to get together with my friends and we're going to have a party, and we're just going to do it outside, and we're not going to hug each other, right? But you're going to have socialization. And so I think that, maybe the pessimistic side of the argument that I've been presenting here, it's excessive and people aren't going to be able to take it. But if you remember that there's ways that we can make this less and less onerous on people, that's very important. And I think that goes to what you were saying, Miles. It's about learning to have more sensitivity and to be paying attention and steering with the best information that you can in the moment. And that applies at the level of the somatic experience as well as the pragmatic.
Yeah. Sorry, I agree with that. I think, we are always living in the unknown. There's I love the ancient Greek concept of time, because we see the future ahead of us and the past behind us. And the ancient Greeks, no, the future is coming up behind you. The past, you can look and see what's happened, but the future, you have no idea. It's coming up behind you, and that's the reality, whether we realize it or not. And I think that we have to come to terms with, we don't even know what the coronavirus is, how it affects different people differently, how some it doesn't affect at all, and we are living in a palpable, tangible state of unknowing, and that state of unknowing has couched within it revelations that whisper to us, that enhance our lives, that tug us forward. And I think that's a gift.
Wonderful. People are going to have to work out outside, Rafe. If only we had an expert in sort of movement in trees and nature, something like that. Those gym people would learn a lot, wouldn't they? If only there was someone around like that. Okay, so just to end then, I think we need to bring in the ancient spiritual tradition of slaughtering a goat that we blame for everything. The scapegoat, this is where the saying comes from. So who's to blame for corona? The most unreasonable, ridiculous answer wins. Okay, so I'm going to go that it was engineered by Zoom in order to increase their stock price. That's my goat to slaughter. Anyone else got an unreasonable thing, personal institution to blame for corona?
I think it was a Democrat plot to actually show Trump up for the lunatic that he is in his fullest glory.
Got it.
I think Trump is actually doing a double cross, right? This is 4D chess, right? He's got the vaccine in his back pocket. He's going to release it in September, and he's going to fly to victory with 70%.
They're not at the Embodiment Conference. We'll fucking go berserk if that happens. Miles.
Dude, it's obvious. The Tiger King. Come on.
Tiger King did it.
Absolutely. What,
oh, you're going to go to Jewish conspiracy that you're in Israel there. Apparently big cats can get it. My wife gives me daily updates about whether or not cats can get COVID. This is her big concern. So, okay, guys, it's been a pleasure. This has been fun. You all look like shit, but it's good to see you. And take care. I hope you and your loved ones stay safe and well.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys. Nice to meet you. Forward to next time. Take care. Bye.
Some ways to get more, to give back, and to get more involved now. So the biggest request I have would be to share the podcast with your friends, people that you think would really enjoy it. Email it to them, put it on your social media, tell them about it, old school. Really appreciate that. Equally, if you want to support us financially, you can go to Patreon. That's patreon.com/Embodiment Podcast and give us $1 an episode. And I'd say they're well worth $1. So that's less than £1 if you're in UK-ish. So yeah, please go there. On the embodiedfacilitator.com website is where this is hosted. If most people I think listen to for iTunes. iTunes, we'd certainly appreciate a review. The way iTunes works means that a review means more people will find it. iTunes regards it as more important for searches. So even a couple of sentences review really does help as a little thank you to us. And if you want to go to embodiedfacilitator.com, you can see the actual, links to the sites. There's comments on there. The Facebook group tends to be where people discuss things. So if you go to put in the Embodiment Podcast into Facebook, there's a page which is relatively quiet and a group which does have some discussion on. So I will reply to things personally there. So also on embodiedfacilitator.com website, there's all sorts of freebies there. There's videos, there's free ebooks, there's ebooks you can buy. And of course, there's our newsletter list. If you want to stay in touch and learn about things like the Embodied Facilitator Course and our next Embodied Yoga Principles teacher training, then go to that website and you'll see a little pop-up and you can get the newsletter through there. Okay, so I think they're the main ones. Tell your friends, pay us some money on Patreon, give us a review on iTunes, Send us your email if you want to be on the newsletter list, and get involved on the Facebook there. Bit long. Pick whatever you like that works for you.